Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is Vivek. Welcome to our webinar on the LinkedIn Live event. We've called it Agentic Aftermarket Is Here. Are you ready now? And we decided to kind of put this event together because over the last many weeks, we've had a number of conversations with prospects and customers alike who are beginning to feel that, maybe this time around, it may not be wise to sit this one out like a lot of people sat the 99 dot-com investment bubble and dot-com investment thesis out for a while. And so we thought it might be good for us to kind of just share with you what we're seeing and what we're hearing, but more importantly, kind of share with you some ideas about how you as senior business leaders can think about the agent and the AI aftermarket opportunity and make sure that you have your company organized and more importantly, ready to start moving forward with some very specific things. By way of introduction, I'm the founder and CEO of Entitle. I started this company about 12 years ago. We focus solely on business to business and industrial aftermarket teams. And really the intent behind this is to make sure that we provide intelligence, action, and recommendations to our customers who are service leaders and aftermarket leaders in all these companies. I came to start this company after 30 years, almost 30 years in the industrial businesses. And I've got tons of experience in this area, both as a practitioner and as a leader. Today, I'm accompanied by a couple of colleagues of mine who are logged into both in the LinkedIn Live as well as this activity here on YouTube. They'll be monitoring for questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments or links. And one of them, either Nikhil or Lalit, will let me know if there's a question that we need to answer. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start this presentation. So I think what I would say to you is over the last, I'd say 3 to 6 months, we've seen a plethora of headlines that look like the one you're just seeing out here, right? We talked about Bezos recently, Jeff Bezos, a famous founder of Amazon. The rumor has it he's raising $100 billion to buy companies in manufacturing to transform them. OpenAI is partnering with partnering with private equity funds to do the same thing. And Anthropic is not going to be left behind. And they're talking to some very leading private equity funds to start doing it. And the way I think about it is they're recognizing that the manufacturing world is massive. It contributes to, I'd say, 5 to 10% of the GDP worldwide. And it is somewhat less progressed, if you may, in the context of getting AI to start making a big difference. So clearly they're seeing some opportunity that a lot of other people are saying, maybe we should go after this thing, right? So my question to you as business leaders is, do you want them to change you or are you going to change yourself, right? And that turns out to be the pivotal question, I think, for you to answer and why that sets up the next 15 minutes of this presentation to kind of share with you what we think you should do and could do in terms of making sure you're the one doing the change, not you're the one being changed out, right? So that's kind of where we start thinking about it. And I think what these companies are seeing, and I'm seeing this in private equity across the board, because we work with a lot of private equity funds and the portfolio companies, right? The funds are savvy enough to recognize that you as aftermarket leaders control quite an interesting economic stream for the OEMs. Your margins are higher, operating margins are higher than new equipment margins. You get a lot of profit out of your aftermarket businesses, right? We've seen time and time again where, from my own personal experience, I was about 10%, actually 15% of one of my employers' revenue line. I was running the marketing arm of a services business, and we were a fully 110% of the operating margin for the company, right? So it can be extraordinarily rich if you do it right. But the problem is that you wind up with this situation where your salespeople and service people are focusing on the largest customers, also the most squeaky wheels. And as a result, are really focusing on less than 10, 15% of your installed base, right? So that's kind of the situation out there. And many of these investors, many of these people like Bezos are seeing it and saying, you know what, there's an opportunity to go out and transform this business. And if the OEMs aren't going to take advantage of their own install base, we're going to do something about it, right? So that's kind of what's going on in the world around us right now. And you know, what I can say to you is, having gone through the 99 .com revolution and .com boom, it made sense, and it generally makes sense to kind of sit out some of these big cataclysmic changes that happen in the world, technology shifts that happen in the world, right? It makes perfect sense. And certainly in this case, in the case of AI, it made sense because we all know early AI was unreliable. I mean, there's, Lord knows, the hallucination word was on everybody's lips. Stuff was just not working as well as it should be. There was a lot of general purpose stuff and lots of toys, as I call it, and it wasn't fitting the domain per se. And that was a big deal. Somebody had to do a lot of work to it, and then you wind up starting pilots because of all these above mentioned issues. Pilots would fail. You didn't have the right training. You didn't have the right infrastructure, and so the risk was pretty high, right? So why go spend all this money and do something that doesn't pay off, right? So it kind of made sense in this case. But what I can tell you is things have changed dramatically in the last 18 months, and I'd actually say the last 6 months have been unbelievable, right? If I look at our company, at Entitled, we were dabbling in aftermarket. Sorry, we were dabbling in AI. Definitely, the people who focus a lot on the AI use case was a go-to-market team, using it for content and other things, and our engineers who are using it to kind of start writing code in the early days with some of the popular coding tools out there. But in the last 6 to 9 months, the changes have been amazing, right? The ability to reason has dramatically improved, right? You can start reading unstructured documents and kind of start making sense of it. And we're seeing it every day in our own business, right? The ability to create a workflow. Just this afternoon, we had a share and care session, if you may, in our team. And one of our colleagues showed us how we built an agent that did a multi-step process in terms of taking valuable information and turning it into content, right? And these are things you could get a non-technical person to do. We're able to start kind of making really good, coherent sense of some of these things. We're putting a solution together right now for one of our customers where we're reading an email that comes in for inquiry to quote, inquiry to offer, and we're able to go back and forth and have a conversation as a bot, as an agent, with this prospect and customer, and it's completely coherent and cogent in terms of how it starts creating this stuff. So there's a lot of information, a lot of things that are going on there, which are absolutely stunning, and that's what led me to tell most of our customers, saying, "Listen, I know it made sense to sit the last revolution out. I don't think it makes sense anymore. And if you don't do it, there's tons of stuff going on out there that other people are doing, that at some point somebody like a Bezos or somebody like an OpenAI or Anthropic is going to come and eat your lunch." And there's a lot of activities going on in the world around you. So the good part is technology is moving fast, but more importantly, there's enough proof points and enough evidence, and more importantly, enough experience that you can learn from, right? So you have everything from image generation, video generation. We see lots of stuff today. I mean, those of you who are watching this on LinkedIn know that there's a ton of video and image production out there. In terms of marketing, support, and other functions, that's very common. And you're beginning to start seeing in the 2 areas or 3 areas of coding, in terms of legal activities and in terms of writing and content creation, there's a lot of stuff going on that's out there. I will tell you from our side, we've practiced many of these things that you see on this box out here, right? We have the ability to keep track of all our customer recordings. We're able to convert some of that to insights. We turn those insights into lessons for our product engineers, product managers, and then start doing many things along with that, right? So in this little framework of 12 boxes out here, there's a number of things we're doing ourselves, and that's what's going on in the world around us, not in the world of manufacturing. So I can tell you the other thing that's going on right now is every conversation I have, I ask 2 questions. Are you doing something with AI? And if not, when? And the most common response I get is, no, I'm not doing much yet, or we're dabbling with Copilot, but no, we haven't done anything meaningful yet. And when I ask the question, why, the simple answer I get, which is understandable but not really, is, Vivek, we really don't know what we should focus on. Vivek, we really don't know if we have the ability to kind of staff this thing the way it should be for success. All legitimate reasons, but I'm going to tell you that you have to start doing something about it right now, because the cost of doing nothing is really high right now, right? I'm telling people in very simple words, the cost of doing nothing outweighs the cost of doing something wrong. And the big aha to me is, again, I'm out in Europe right now, visiting prospects and customers, and what we're seeing is this thing on the top left box about tribal knowledge erosion. There are so many people I've met in the last few days out here who've been with their companies for 15, 20, 25 years, in some cases actually 39 years. Guess what? All those folks are going to retire soon. So the erosion that's going to happen in knowledge is extraordinarily high. Luckily, there's enough information captured in form of emails and notes and service tickets and support tickets and so on and so forth that can start doing it, right? That you can start tapping into. If you don't do it, your competitors are doing it. And what's worse, private equity investors, much like we saw on the first page, are going to come in and start trying to do something different because they're seeing this industry is ripe for change, ripe for transformation. And so my plea to you is the cost of doing nothing is too high for you to sit on the sidelines. Time for you to kind of get doing something, right? And by the way, when I think about us as personas in terms of the industry, look, I get it. You can make mistakes on a simple process and you can completely screw up your product quality. You can screw up safety, compliance, who knows what else, right? So the natural inclination for people in our industry to be very careful and wait for perfect information kind of makes sense. The risk is too high. In this case, you know what? I think you can get away with not waiting for all perfection to start being in place. You can start the data. You're never going to get perfect data. I always tell people two comments I make. Perfect is the enemy of good. And the second comment I make is data remains dirty till you use it. So start using it. You start finding out the issues out there, right? You need to start getting the team aligned. But yeah, that made sense. But right now you can start getting a single individual contributor off to the races with some of these things, right? So you don't need to wait for perfection on some of these things. And guess what? Technology is never going to mature. This thing is at a ridiculous pace for change and improvement. And those things are going to keep going the way they are. So let's not wait for improvements to kind of start kicking in. And then the final thing is like, okay, so Vivek, that's all well and good. It's all good for you to say this stuff. You're not running these manufacturing businesses anymore. You're a software vendor. You're an outsider. Can you help me with this stuff? What can I do? So, like I said, I'm in Europe. I did a workshop yesterday. I'm doing a workshop tomorrow. I'm doing a workshop next week, helping my customers and prospects think about how they should think about agent deployment, how they should think about AI deployment. And I always tell people, listen, you can't start trying to boil the ocean, trying to figure out where you need to go with this thing. You're going to start somewhere. So there's a framework we created, very simple framework, right? For AI to work well, you need tons of data. So we put this little thing called data intensity. It was low to high. If there's a lot of data needed, a lot of intense data, unstructured and structured, it goes to the right side of this chart here. And the framework we have, or the other axis of the framework, decision-making framework, is how repetitive and what's the volume of the stuff, right? So if it's high repetition, which you can have replicable stuff, the volume is pretty high and the data intensity is pretty good. Start building some agents to go do it. You can save extraordinary amounts of time. We've done some work recently with some customers on two areas that make sense. One is an inquiry to offer process, which is inbound emails coming in, turning them into offers and quotes. That's a high volume process. It's repetitive, right? It's the same thing again and again. It's complicated because a lot of different context related things you need to do. We've been able to automate that and get 70-80% drop in both elapsed time and takt time. It's huge. You can do that in the same thing with the sales part of it, right? And we'll give you some examples in a second as well. So there's a lot of things you can do today that start building on some of these things. And every one of us, every one of you have these process opportunities to start improving, right? So I would start picking out these things out quickly. And like I mentioned to you, there's a couple of things we've already started. We're building a sales agent, which is really taking a look at some of the install base information, taking some of a look at the recommendations that our own AI agents have built in terms of offers, and automatically launching emails and voice memos to prospects. There's nothing to stop us from doing that today, and we're doing it. I explained to you the quote agent, as you call it, which is the email to offer, right? Inquiry to offer. We've got that process going. And the predictive maintenance agent is something we built from the early days of AI, how to take structured data and unstructured data and create recommendations or offers based on install base. So there's some very simple things you can do. Again, it sounds simple, but there's things that you can do today that make your life infinitely easier. And again, I was with a customer yesterday, and the discussion we had was fascinating. You have a sales team in region that spends extraordinary amounts of time trying to figure out what to offer a customer, and then turns around and starts writing emails and phone calls and so on and so forth. As a result of that, they can only focus on the top customers. I'd say top 5 or 10%, not even the top 20%. They're exposing the remaining 70, 80, 90% of the installed base to others. And I asked the prospect that I was visiting yesterday, saying, so why can't you go after this? And their answer is very simple. Vivek, I spend so much time on my top customers that I simply cannot pay attention to the rest. Imagine if you had this system that's working in the background where the predictive maintenance agent is creating the opportunities and finding the opportunities and doing this analysis automatically. Your sales agent is sending out inquiries or offers out there saying, hey, here's what we find with your compressor, your motor, or pump, or whatever it could be. And then your quote agent is coming around and coming back with offers very specifically with price and getting data from the policies on discounting and so on and so forth to create this whole thing. So all these, while they look like the individual independent agents, they can all work in tandem to kind of make this thing work. And that's the beauty of this thing, right? So I think the future is now. You don't need to wait forever to get this thing going. And a lot of things will change as you start implementing these processes, right? It's as I always tell, hey, what's your from and where you're going to? And this left side, right side of the chart is exactly how I want to think about this stuff. The early deployments have shown us a lot of things. We can start, getting infinite capacity, right? I always tell people, if you're on a good day, a sales rep may maybe touch 100, 150 customers during the year on a good day, right? Imagine this agent's running in the background, infinite capacity, right? You can touch everybody all the time, as frequently as you want, as infrequently as you want, right? So there's a lot of things you can do out there that start with capacity, that start with really intelligent outreach, and really start closing deals out there. And I know this sounds very trite coming from a vendor like us, technology vendor. It's not a technology decision. This is really a people, process, and timing decision, right? You can wait for perfect conditions, and Lord knows all of us waited for like 5, 6, 7 years back in the dot-com bubble, dot-com boom, and we didn't get penalized too much. Or you could start today and imperfectly and start getting the process underway. And that's what we recommend out here, right? We'll talk about some of these things on the next page here, right? In my mind, there's things you can start doing today, which make a big difference. You can start really assessing, hey, where's my biggest risk as a company? Again, the same prospect I visited yesterday, they're a very proud old 150-year-old company. They have, like I said, 25, 30, 45, 40-year veterans that were in the room with me yesterday, right? There's a lot of tribal knowledge at risk out there. These guys kind of know where their bodies are buried. And so start figuring out where those tribal knowledge risks are. Start figuring those processes out. It could be in the inquiry to order, it could be in application engineering, it could be in proposal writing, a lot of different places you can find these things. And then you can start working these things out, right? And while there's a temptation to start with a very logical, reasonable flow, much like you've done it, stepwise flow, think about the outcomes you want and design your processes going forward on the outcomes you want. Because AI, what is going on today is ridiculously magical. And starting to find a way to challenge your people and challenge your system to get to the outcomes right away is actually quite important. So that's kind of how we think about it. There's a lot of things we can talk about here, but these are some of the lessons that we think we can share with you that can be beneficial to you guys as well. If you're interested in learning more about this whole process, come talk to us. Scan this QR code, write to me at entitled.com. Love to talk to you, love to see what's going on, because this is a thing now, right? I would not be sitting out here, propagating this unless I believed it. And I'm telling you, the time is now. It's time to get going. Thank you very much for your time today, Nikhil, Lalit. Any questions, any comments out there that you guys have been monitoring? I can't hear you. I don't think you can speak on Restream. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, that's a great question. So, what I would say to you very simply is I'll go back to the cultural roots of cultural norms and industrial companies, right? We're all engineers, we're all operations people. We like to have perfection, we like to have low risk. And as a result of that, where the mistakes I see is that the people who want to make the change and investment happen are thinking of all the things that could go wrong or all the edge cases, as I like to call it, and try to design this crazy perfect solution for all the edge cases. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. Start with the 70, 80% of the fit, right? That's good enough. If you fix 70, 80% of your process, that'll take you a long way. So I think that's the biggest mistake, Lalit, I see people doing. They try to cover everything, try to cover all the edge cases, and try to minimize risk, and that just paralyzes them as a result of that. Yeah, so I think I like I mentioned earlier, perfect is the enemy of good. You can't wait for perfection. So how do you start? I think if you can bound the process, so again, I'll give you an example. You bound the process or bound the scope by saying, I'm going to take a look at a certain region or a certain product line where there's sufficient volume, where you can see the material difference in the improvement, and kind of build the pilot around that. Where we've seen these things is that between setting up the infrastructure and training the model, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get that process underway. And after week 4 or 5 or 6, you can really get production going. And so you can have reasonable amount of data or evidence to see whether this idea that you came up with makes sense. And about 3 months or so is a good time. 90 days, 90 to 120 days is a good enough duration for a pilot, I think, to start seeing how this impact has improved the outcomes and how impact has what the technology has improved your productivity or effectiveness or whatever it could be scale. So those are the kinds of things we see. Hopefully that answered the question, Lalit. Great. So with that, what I'm going to say is, like I said, there's never a perfect time to start. You need to get going. I would strongly recommend find a process, find a workflow that's being impacted today or that could get impacted today, and just start getting something underway. Right? Could be in field service, could be in customer service, it could be in inside sales, but start applying some of these lessons as fast as you can. Thank you very much, everybody. This is a pleasure to kind of share some of these ideas and lessons with you. If there's anything we can do, please call on us. The QR code will take us to will take you to our website, and please write to me as well, vivek@entitle.com. Thank you very much. We're signing off. Have a good evening, good day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.